You're such a racist.
You're listening to the Real Christian Manliness podcast with Isaac and Tim Ingram. Let's get manly!
Well, hello out there, Christian men, and maybe the occasional wannabe or lady out there that might be listening into this conversation. This is, like the intro said, the Real Christian Manliness podcast. I'm Isaac. I'm in southwestern Montana with fresh snow on the ground. And then I've got my brother in Fort Worth, Texas. Tim, how are you doing today?
I am alive and well and living the American dream. Go to your room. At least that's what they tell me.
Yeah. You're so excited too. I can tell. You're pumped.
Yeah, it's Saturday morning. I'm not excited about anything.
Nice.
And so today we have a special guest, Mike Peters, missionary to Spain, España. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing all right. I'm breathing. It's a good day.
Well, yeah. How's your Spanish?
It's all right. I still make mistakes, but it's all right. I feel very comfortable expressing myself in Spanish most of the time.
How long have you been in Spain?
We have been in Spain now. We just finished 4 years at the beginning of this month. Marked 4 years for us.
Okay, well, awesome. Well, growing up in Texas, I feel like I might have a good grasp on the Spanish language. So
that's awesome.
I've worked in multiple restaurants. I'm not trying to be stereotypical or anything, but
sure.
You know, so
You're such a racist.
Well, and then there's the bus ministry, you know. So
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
You gotta be bilingual in some aspects. So why don't you go ahead and just give us a brief testimony? And by the way, I talked to Rob Rabideau last night and on the podcast, so you know there's a little bit of a connection there. He said he knew you.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's neither here nor there. So why don't you go ahead and just give us a brief testimony of your life and where God has you right now?
Yeah, man, absolutely. That'd be great. Well, I grew up I'm a second generation Christian. I mean, if in the traditional sense, but I mean, if you go back, I mean, I can trace it back to 6 generations of folks who are believers in the family. Beyond that, I couldn't tell you. So that's obviously a huge blessing right there to thank God for. But that being what it is, I mean, as you guys are aware, that being a second generation Christian doesn't mean anything as far as your personal relationship with God.
Yeah.
I mean, you've seen second gens come and go. But I just to give context, I lived in that kind of an environment, which was good. And my dad was Army, so we moved around a little bit. But we actually grew up in, as far as my childhood's concerned, what marked, I guess, what helped direct us to where we're at right now, helped me to where I'm at right now, is my dad was stationed at Fort Sam Houston in San Antonio, Texas, and we were attending Liberty Baptist Church with Dwayne Nichols. You guys familiar with him, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love him. But he's very distinct. You know, the Bible. The Word of God.
I was gonna make a comment about wind-sucking preachers.
Yeah.
Whenever he really gets into his message and the meat of it, he definitely has that that characteristic.
Yeah, it's a cadence almost. But anyways, So we were there, and during a missions conference that year, I was 11 years old, and I felt that God was really leading me into worldwide missions. To what degree, I wasn't sure, but I felt that in my heart. Just it was very clear, very, very clear. But as the story goes, I mean, you're 11 years old, you're like, man, I want to serve God with my life. I want to go tell people about Jesus somewhere. You get older and you get distracted. You get your own ideas and goals, things that aren't inherently sinful, but they aren't the will of God for your life. So as I got older, I just wanted to pursue other things. From about the time I was about 11 or 12 until I was about 19, just kind of going after my dreams, if you will. I was after we lived in San Antonio, we moved to central Illinois, right near Springfield, in a town called Lincoln, Illinois. It's the middle of nowhere. But close enough to Chicago and close enough to St. Louis that I could spend all my money going to Cubs games and Cardinals games all the time. And I did. It was great. Diehard Chicago Cubs fan. And anyway, my dream was to play baseball. I just wanted to play pro baseball. I'm not saying I was that good. I'm not trying to claim that at all. But that was my thing. And I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't a bad kid in high school, but I was maybe inwardly rebelling, if you will. It was the characteristically good on the outside, follow the rules, do what you're supposed to, but with my own secret sins in my heart of rebellion, pride, and the list goes on and on. Mm-hmm. So, anyhow, I had actually met it's funny, the ironic thing is I was with a friend of mine once when I was 19. We went out to go door knocking in some small nearby town, smaller than our town, if you could imagine that. And we're knocking doors, and we meet this guy, this older gentleman. He invites us in. We're sitting talking to him, and he tells us that he is a baseball scout for the Minnesota Twins, right? And I'm just thinking, I immediately go to my skeptical mode. This guy, he's older. He's probably senile. I don't know. He's just not with it. And apparently he could read the skepticism on my face because he called me out on it. And he goes, you don't believe that I was a baseball scout. He's like, you just hang on a second. So then he goes back into his bedroom, right? Me and my friend who are door knocking are sitting on this guy's couch. The guy's name was Ellsworth Brown. I will never forget his name. He comes out of his bedroom with 2 Minnesota Twins World Series rings on his hand. and he puts his hand out right in front of me and goes, do you believe me now? And I was speechless, of course. He took the time and showed us photo albums of guys that he had signed into the major leagues back in the 70s and 80s, guys that I had baseball cards of. And I'm like, this guy's in the same photo with them. This is amazing. So I was like, I'm thinking in my head, right? Like, this is it. This is my big break. Mr. Brown is going to take me to work out with some local colleges that he's, knows around here. And I went back and visited him about 3 more times, none of which were obviously to talk about the gospel or anything, but to talk about baseball instead. But I kid you not, man. Listen, like, I remember distinctly on the second or third time I went to visit him, I was sitting on his couch in his living room. We're talking about baseball, and it's like this conversation, this transcript of a conversation is playing in my head of me and God, And I'm thinking, baseball is awesome. This is going to be my life, my dreams are going to come true, whatever. And God's like, Mike, is baseball really wrong in and of itself? I'm thinking, well, no, not inherently wrong. It's like, right, but how are you going to do what I want you to do with your life if you're doing this? And I remember that question just ringing in my head as I'm sitting there on Mr. Brown's couch, and it was just, I felt so uncomfortable, just disturbed spiritually, if you will. And I couldn't shake it. And things just got so bad at home. My parents divorced actually the same year that I felt God called me to the mission field. But, I was 19 at the time when I met Mr. Brown, and I went home, and just was going about, my regular, I had graduated from high school. I was working a job, making some decent money, but things just kind of exploded at home with my mom because I was growing up with my mom in the house. My dad wasn't there. And I was like, I got to the point where I said, Mom, just forget this. I'm packing up my truck. I'm moving out. I'm done with you, done with your attitude, done with all this stuff. Not done with God per se, just I was tired of my mother. God bless her. But so before I did though, she did that. She told me, she's like, before you do anything dumb, I was going to move to live with my dad. She said, will you at least talk to your Christian school principal, who was also the assistant pastor, before you do anything silly? Like, okay, fine. So I talked to him, and through his, I don't know, winsome personality, let's just call it the Holy Spirit on his life, he's like, Mike, just before you do anything dumb, why don't you just go to Bible college for a semester? It's like, it's not for everybody, but just, give God a chance to give you some direction, positive direction. So I did, and I hope this isn't timed because I don't know, my story is dragging on. But I mean, it's all part of the story. I mean, it's just I went to Bible college, and long story short, in 2 weeks after being there, I got my heart right with God, and just like, God, I am screwing this up big time. Just, if you still want me to do this with my life, I'll do it. I clearly cannot handle this myself. Life, that is.
Yeah.
And so that was a turning moment for me, and that was in January 2004. And since then, it's been straightforward towards missions, church planting, and here we are.
Awesome. So what's your immediate family like? Wife, kids? What's that look like?
Well, I have one wife, Jen. We met.
I recommend that's the way to go. It's just one wife.
Right. There are Mormon churches here, but I don't run with those folks.
That's our other podcast.
That's a different podcast. Yeah. No, me and Jen met at Bible college and got married right after she graduated. Stuck around the Chicagoland area where we went to Bible college, and then ended up in Spain. We've got 3 kids. Jack, he's 7. Oliver is 6, and Henry is 3. He was born here in Spain.
Yeah, I remember you having 2 for sure. I like the name Oliver. Oliver is a cool name. I've always liked that name.
Yeah.
Nothing against
That's
Jack
kind of
or
a choice.
Henry, but I like Oliver.
Yeah.
So how's it been? I imagine it's not been a huge deal since they're so young, but raising the kids in a different culture.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's actually it's been interesting. Jack was really intellectual coming over here. And so he was about 4 years old when we got here and did not speak a bit of Spanish. So it was really hard for him to integrate into school that was only Spanish speaking. Oliver wasn't really talking at the time, so it didn't make a difference. But with time, I mean, they ended up adapting, and they speak perfectly now. They speak better than we do, better than their parents. So that, that just, it makes you sad. I mean, when your kid can't communicate on the playground and he's like, can we go back to America? And just, it's like a kick in the stomach. So.
Yeah, whenever Tim and I, whenever we first went over to Romania with our parents, we homeschooled, so we weren't necessarily in a school situation, but we would just go out into the neighborhood, and I mean, the way I remember it, it was just like after a summer, we basically could communicate with pretty much anybody. And so that's one of the blessings of being a young kid and learning a second language. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
What type of ministry does God have you working in right now there in Spain?
Well, our big picture vision, if you will, has always been church planting. Specifically planting local churches wherever God, opens the doors, of course, to see the gospel proclaimed there in a very physical, tangible way. But obviously there's other things that, that revolve around that as well. So we got here, we knew 2 other missionaries that we're partnering with down here in southern Spain. We knew them from the U.S. They're actually Spaniards. Their wives are American, these 2 brothers. They married American girls and then came here to church plant as well. So after we went through our own language school process for about a year and a half, we felt God opening the door to come down to the southern part of Spain. We were in Madrid in the center, we came down to the southern part of Spain and decided to work with this current church plant that was already here in Sevilla. So there was we prayed about it and just kind of thought about, instead of looking to move to a bigger location with the church to have a bigger building per se, why not? There was about a group of 30 people already in the church from a certain specific neighborhood in Sevilla. Why not take those 30 people and start another church in their neighborhood where they live, versus having them come all the way across town? Because, I mean, culturally, to drive 15 minutes in Spain is like driving for an hour and a half in the U.S. They're like, I can't imagine driving 15 minutes. But to us, it's nothing. So, culturally, if there was a church in these people's neighborhood that's going to be more impactful than for them to have to go halfway across town. So we did that, and the second church plant opened in May of what is this? We're in 2017. Opened in May of 2016, and so there's 2 churches right now. And we're praying about the projects that we've started to see another plant open up in the future. We've got a specific ministry here to the gypsies and the homeless. We've got there's a military American Air Force base about 45 minutes from here. And we've just been invited to come down and preach on base at their military chapel. So that's another open door right there. I mean, there's a couple hundred Americans down at the base, Air Force, and then about in between 600, 900 Marines every so often. So, who knows? I have no idea. We're just moving forward until, God makes it obvious what to do. But those are some of the specific things that are going on with that.
So, on a really, really important note, have you picked a soccer team yet?
That's a very important question, and I have not. I try to stay neutral because literally we're in a city of 1.5 million people, and there are 2 major league, I don't know what they call it, major league, top tier 1 soccer teams in our town. So like half the town is a fan of Sevilla Football Club, and half the town is fans of Betis, which is like one of the oldest clubs in Europe. And
well, you should have got. Probably the best thing would have gone with Sevilla because they're the better team.
Well, obviously, yeah, of course. But actually, I retract that statement in case anyone from Sevilla is listening. But
as long as you didn't jump on the Real Madrid bandwagon, we're okay.
Oh man, that's puke.
That's like being a Yankees fan.
Yes, exactly.
And I really enjoyed how you explained the major league. It was like you explained it like a true baseball fan.
Mm-hmm.
So
if you got a quick story moment, I went to my very first Sevilla game after arriving here in Sevilla with the 2 missionary brothers I work with. Somebody kicked the ball and it goes out of bounds. I, in all sincerity, leaned over to one of the guys and goes, "Was that like a foul ball or something?" That was 3 years ago, and they've not ever let me live that down. So
I wouldn't either. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm trying, man.
You were hitting if you would have changed your story to hitting a home run into that guy's yard, you would almost have a Sandlot story when you met that Brown guy.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
Baseball's really deep into your veins, so we understand.
Yeah, it's hard to detoxify myself from that, but
I mean, we lived over in Europe for a few years, so we definitely got the soccer gene in our life. But if it wasn't for that, we'd be pretty hard. I mean, I don't know about Tim, but I'd be pretty hardcore baseball anyway. Baseball only.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this question. I mean, we talk a lot about manhood as far as like in an American sense. What's like the state of men in Spain?
That's a really good question, actually. It was a culture shock for me, to be honest with you. Not to say that men are less manly. I don't even want to say that, but just the way that masculinity looks here, it's just different. Well, to some degree, not too much. But one thing was we get here and the men here wear scarves in the wintertime, and I saw that and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'll never wear a scarf. That's horrible. But no, I have a selection now. So, uh, uh,
Like hipster around your neck type of a scarf.
well, yeah, for legitimate warmth. I mean, not just for, style or show.
Got it.
Um, hang on one second here. Hey, can you go play in your room? Okay, shut the door and tell him to stop it. Yeah, sorry about that.
That's real. That's real manliness right there. Is being a father.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I mean, just guys here dress very, very, what is the term? I don't want to say fancy. That's not the right word. Um, very put together. Let's put it that way. I mean, style here is a big deal, even for men. Having your hair groomed properly, your beard, whatever, wearing nice looking clothes. I mean, you would never see anybody going to Walmart in their pajamas here. That's not that's just not going to happen.
And I'm for that. I wish some of that would creep over to the United States.
Yeah. So, manliness, I mean, in that way. The other thing is that I think that in my opinion, I mean, I'm 33, my wife's 30, we have 3 kids. We've been married for 10 years now. But when you tell people that, and this is for men or women, but they are blown away by the fact that we're so young and that we have a family with 3 children. They're like, you hold on a second. Okay. Tell him to stop. Go see mommy. There you go. But they're blown away by the fact that we have 3 kids. I mean, they're like, you guys are so young. And because most people who are in their 30s are still living with their parents, including men. And so some of the young guys that, we're trying to disciple at church, teaching them, and obviously discipleship is everything. I mean, just obviously theology, but a lot of it's just plain old responsibility and character ethic. Mm-hmm. But trying to get guys to, hey, if there's an opportunity for you to get more hours at work, man, take it. He's like, but I'm already working 25 hours a week. He's like, buddy, it doesn't matter. If they offer you more hours, take it, So that's been something that's very different. Maturing, I guess, maybe you're looking at a guy that's 40, you figure he's got a full-time, solid job, lives on his own, and is responsible enough to have a family. Younger than that, you're not, I mean, it's a roll of the dice.
Huh.
So that's been something to get used to not necessarily put American expectations, but at the same time be like, hey, listen, guy, if you're dating and you want to have a family and you want to serve God in the church, you've got to go beyond your comfort limits. And so, anyway, I don't know if that answered the question. I hope so.
Well, yeah, and I think work ethic and responsibility. I mean, that's right in the middle of the lane as far as masculinity. Regardless of Christian or not, that's just baseline. And I think it's wise to take into consideration cultural norms and things of that nature.
Sure.
But really, if you're okay with sitting around for the majority of your hours and only working 10, 15, 20 hours, I don't care what culture you are. To me, that smells a little lazy to me.
Yeah, you're not ready for a wife. You're not ready for
Absolutely.
a serious role in ministry. So, but I mean, it's a learning process. For them in that aspect. So
yeah, and I think that even in Romania that kind of was similar. I think it took a while for a young man to strike out on his own and gain some independence. I think there was a little bit of staying close to home a lot. Some of it was cultural, some of it was financial, but I definitely think that's a European type thing. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we it's funny. We go to other children's birthday parties, people that have kids that are our kids' age. We are literally always the youngest couple there, and the folks who are in their 40s are just now having babies, and
Wow.
we've got a 7-year-old, and they're going, "What?" So it's we're odd, but that's okay. I mean, it's a great opportunity to break the ice with a lot of people.
Sure. So, how do you approach just kind of discipleship in general? It it's in Spain. Do they have any type of biblical literacy? Or are you starting from ground zero? How does that work?
Um, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it depends on the person. It really does. I mean, everybody has a general understanding of the broad, and I use the very, very, very broad um, Christianity, if you will, to include Catholicism. I mean, that's what they think Christianity is. So they have a very broad understanding. When I say broad, maybe shallow is a better word. Very shallow understanding of God, the Bible, Jesus. They know about that, but they don't really know more than that. So again, it depends on each person. New believers, we've got some resources we use, and resources is finding resources is not always easy either. Good resources for discipleship, but we take them through a new believer course, that kind of thing. Some of the guys in the church who feel burdened for ministry, we're going through more deeper theological things. Pick a book and we just read it together, discuss it, give them opportunities to teach in the small group Bible studies throughout the week, things of that nature. So it's got to be tailor made, I guess, for each individual.
Yeah, that's
But culturally though, there's a huge open door for that, because here people in America, I mean, and this is not to critique Americans, but as an American myself, I'm always thinking about the next thing on my schedule. Spaniards don't think that way. They will literally sit and talk with you about anything for hours, and to them it's no big deal. So if you get to talking to somebody about the Bible, about God, about whatever, they're not in a hurry to get you to shut up. They will literally engage you in conversation. You know, typically that's the case.
that's interesting. Uh, a lot of times, when you're out soul winning, you kind of wish you could run across people that would just sit there and talk for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that sounds pretty interesting. I've always wanted to visit Spain, and so I need to get over there. There's probably 200 other countries I need to get to as well. So.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I've been to 19 or 20 countries, so it's not like saying I haven't been anywhere, but there's just so many different places I haven't been. Um, well, we're starting to wind down on our time a little bit.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Let me ask a couple real quick questions, and just see what you have to say about them. Outside of, say, your father or a pastor, who would you say is your hero or biggest role model?
Can I say Jesus?
I don't see why not.
I just, I know what you're going for. I'm just messing with you, man. Obviously Jesus. No, beyond that, I mean, that's a really tough question. I mean, I would say the easiest answer for me to go back to my original testimony. My Christian school principal, his name was Tom Bryant, and he was the associate pastor there at the church, and just faithful man of God that convinced me to at least give God a shot, give God an opportunity to work in my life. Um, I would say him. Never an ounce of pride. I'm somebody, you're nobody.
Hmm.
Just like, hey man, can I help point you to Jesus? Was always his thing, and it impacted me so greatly that our second born, and I don't endorse this way of thinking when it comes to naming your children, but at the time I did. And when Oliver was born, we named him Oliver Bryant, just because Dr. Bryant had been so so used of God in my life. So yeah, I would say that for sure.
That's awesome.
And he's nobody. He's nobody anybody would know. He's just some
Yeah.
guy in the middle of nowhere, Illinois, serving God.
And I like to ask that question, if anything, is just to point out the importance of, good role models
Yes.
in a man's life. So, another question that comes to mind: what, and this may not be a short answer, so we'll see how this goes.
Sure.
What's an ideal or a thought or a belief that you've had before you went to the mission field that has changed being over on the mission field?
Anything specific?
Well, whether it's a practical matter in church or masculinity or just something that being in a different culture might have changed the way you view things.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, there's a lot that has made a paradigm shift for us since, I mean, you grow up. I mean, you're used to your little 35-mile radius around your church and job and house where you live in the U.S. And you get outside of that and just realize that God is not confined to that one way of ministry or of thinking, ministry philosophy. Now, don't get me wrong, I am more strong on my Bible doctrine now than I think I ever was in the. I know that. I'm not even saying I think. I'm more strong doctrinally than I ever was in the States, because you get over here and you have to really think through, why do I believe this? And I also need to explain why I believe this to these people that don't have that common baseline that they did back. I mean, because before you spend all your time around church people that believe like you. I'm not saying everybody does this, but at least I did. People that believe just like me, think just like me, act like me, dress like me, be like me. I don't have to know why I believe what I believe.
Yeah.
Then you come here, and that's totally different. So doctrinally, 100% stronger. Practically speaking, I mean, just little things here and there that just make you go, this bugs me, but it's not a big deal. It's the way the Spanish folks are. Mm-hmm. So, and it comes with time to adjust to that. I mean, one thing that's funny, but people just are not used to the idea of starting on time. I hate being late. I hate starting late. I hate things that go late and go past the time that they should. But that's everything here in this country. Literally everything. People invite us to an event or a dinner or a birthday party. We get there 10 minutes early, right? And the people who are hosting it aren't even there, and so it's just, come on, man. And so you got to be patient with that, because otherwise you get pretty aggravated. Yeah. And another thing too is just the way people do church or do ministry or what have you. I mean, you guys know you were MKs, and you see the American paradigm. You look at the way whatever it was like in Romania, and you go, these people don't need to do church in an American format. They don't have to. Doctrine's the main thing. Yeah. And if it's not going to affect the gospel message, I mean, I can give them my counsel, my wisdom, say, hey, look, I think this would be a better decision for you, but ultimately protect the gospel message of Jesus Christ and let that be that. Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, do the women and men sit together in your church, or do they have to sit on separate sides of the building?
Oh no, they sit together. Yeah. They very much. Yeah.
That was a weird thing going to Romania. Is like all the men would sit on one side, all the women would sit on the other side.
Yeah.
It's like junior church all over again.
Right. You get all kinds. I mean, we've got people in our church who were former Catholics, former Pentecostals, former atheists, former whatever, and they all just, I mean, you've got people here. I had a lady tell me one day at church, she was just like, well, Jesus was a communist. And this lady, her name's Carmen, she's like, I don't know, 80-something. And I just smiled, praise the Lord, Carmen. I'm so glad you're here. Jesus was a communist. And inside I'm thinking, you got to be kidding. But sometimes you have to just glaze over that stuff and just
Yeah.
let you don't. I mean, why get involved in something that does not make a difference, really?
Yeah.
So it's leaving all those things aside. I mean, just to protect the gospel message, the purity of the gospel, salvation by grace through Christ, and eliminate being too overly concerned about the rest of it.
Yeah.
So,
And I like the way you put that. There's a lot of things that don't really matter, but we're just so ingrained that a service goes this way. You come up, you have an opening hymn, then the pastor does this, and we just get so stuck in that. And at our church in Texas, whenever we got a new pastor, he seemed like every year he would kind of just tweak something and just move the special here and start this way. It just seems like just little things here and there. And it was funny to see how I reacted to that internally. It's like that just, it's weird, it feels weird, but it's inconsequential. So
and it's like when you get to those things and you're like, my feelings tell me that this is annoying, but I need to put my feelings aside and use my discernment to think, is this going to hinder the message of the gospel or not? And then make a decision based on that. Even something as simple as we sing a song. We were at a church in Madrid that, they'd sing, we'd have a hymn or something, some song, and we learned it that way in Spanish. We come down to the church in Sevilla, sing the same song, but they've changed a few words in how it sounds. And I'm thinking, that ain't right. It's like, what difference does it make? It's the same song, man. Just, stop. So it's yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that way of thinking, I mean, really started for us once we began to travel and raise money to come to Spain. Just seeing other churches, even in the States, that were very different from ours. I mean, Baptist churches. We're not talking about other denomination or anything. Just they're different. And to go, that's okay. God is still blessing the ministry here, and who am I to say that they're doing something wrong if it's not clearly spelled out in Scripture? So
that's good. That's good. Well, let's go ahead and wind this down. It's been a pretty great conversation. Sure. I enjoyed catching up with you after a few years. Is there any place where people can find you and see what you're doing in ministry or something on social media, anything like that?
Yeah, we're on Facebook at Mike, the letter N, and Jen Peters. And then the church's website, which obviously I'm no web designer, I needed updated, but it's iglesiabautistafe.es. Or you can even just Google search Iglesia Bautista Fe Sevilla, and you could find our church's Facebook page, recent services. We're started doing Facebook Live for the church services and things like that. So absolutely, we'd be happy to connect with anybody.
Awesome, and we'll put some of that information in the show notes and all that stuff. So, Tim, you got anything you need to add, or?
Find you a soccer team soon before they kick you out of the country.
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And, I figure we do street evangelism. We go out and hand out John and Romans and stuff in the street just to whoever's out there. If I were wearing a Sevilla soccer jersey, I'd probably get a lot more attention.
Might be an open door for you there, so I might
get
work.
beat up by the fans of the other team. So who knows?
Well, anyway, it's been fun. We pray that God will bless everything that you're doing over there for the Lord and continue service. So thank you for your time, brother. And
absolutely.
Thank you guys out there, and maybe there's some women out there, who knows, listening. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you next time on the next episode of the Real Christian Manliness Podcast.
Take care, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Real Christian Manliness Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our show. Now, if you could do us a favor, go over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. That way other people can find us easily in the rankings. And if for some reason you don't think we deserve 5 stars, give us whatever you think we deserve, but please explain why we got that rating in a review. Now make sure you subscribe and have a great day.